Another guy that you're hearing some of is George Edwards. That's the defensive coordinator for the Vikings from a season ago. The Vikings announced he will not be back. So, what do you think about Edwards, and what do you know of him as a defensive coordinator?
Yeah, I know that his time with the Bills when he was running a defense and actually calling plays about 6 years ago or so didn't end very well. I don't think they had a ton of defensive talent at that time, necessarily, and I think that kind of hurt him as a continuing DC. I think he learned a lot from those times. Went to the Dolphins, was a linebacker coach around some decent Dolphins defenses, and then obviously was on a part of, as the defense coordinator, some really good staffs with the Vikings. And but the difference being that he wasn't necessarily calling plays. That's Zimmer's job there in Minnesota. That's what he's best at, dating back to Cincinnati days. So you're again taking a risk on a guy here who hasn't really truly called defensive plays since 2010 to 2011. So there's a little bit of mystery there, but he's been a part of good defenses, for the past 6-7 years now, and he's been with a very sharp mind in Zimmer, and I think he's probably learned a lot and would love to get another run and apply his teachings there. And it seems like Minnesota is in the ilk of replacing him with a family member. If you look over there, Zimmer would jump into that role. But I don't know why they split directions there. Maybe it's just run its course, and Edwards doesn't want to return, and he'd like something new, some different challenge, and maybe he's looking to call plays again, so he wanted to step away. You never really know. So I do think, though, if they get him, he's been a part of good defenses, and I think he's more than capable if they want to keep that comfort between a guy who was on staff with Stefanski last year.
If you look at it, is he more a 3-4 or a 4-3 guy? What would you expect scheme wise from Edwards, coming from that Zimmer line of defense, if you will?
Yeah, it's a 4-3 defense. They'll play plenty of nickel, but they'll play 4-3 base, and it'll look pretty similar to what you saw from Greg Williams in a sense. Not necessarily the solo high deep, but they played Anthony Harris, who's also a free agent, a free safety quite a bit, and he was pretty deadly back there the last few years. So I think it would be something pretty similar to that 4-3 look.
Aggressive as far as blitzing, or are they more traditional? Not. And what does that defense look like? What's if you were going to say the Vikings defense, that style, what's its calling card?
Well, they get after the passer, and they get after him with two really good edge rushers, Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin, and they do blitz. They do bring people. Anthony Barr. They have good linebacker play with Eric Kendricks and like I said, Anthony Harris, and obviously they have Harrison Smith, who's a dynamic safety. They have there in Minnesota, and it allowed them to do a bunch of different things. So it's tough for me to sit here and say what he would do with a completely different personnel than what they've been accustomed to. But I would expect that whoever gets this job has a little bit more aggressive approach and a creative aggressive approach to confuse opposing offenses.